Good morning, uh, good evening, whatever it is for you. Hejos, hejos. Okay, okay. Setup done. I think. I'm not sure. Um, I haven't done reading in so long. I'm a little bit actually. so, so yeah. As usual, I have turned off everything that might distract. So there's gonna be no except for half pads of hydrate and stretch, um, which I might not see. Let me let me pour myself some tea, which I might not see immediately. Um, but sound alerts switched off, and nothing should be distracting us like this. You can just listen to some reading and get comfy without any distracting sounds. Hopefully, unless something's happening. Good morning, Tuki. Yeah. We will continue reading Heidi, and as usual, I won't be able to react to chat while I'm reading. I'll look up every now and then. It's convenient, and maybe react. Wah, wah. Still morning. Okay. Sit back, relax, or do whatever you're doing, and just enjoy. Chapter 8: Disturbances in Sesamon. On the following morning, Sebastian had no sooner opened the front door for the Herr Kandidat that ushered him into the library than someone else rang the bell, but with such force that Sebastian rushed down the stairs with all his might, for he thought, no one rings like that except Herr Sesemann himself. He must have come home unexpectedly. He pulled open the door. A ragged boy with a hand organ on his back stood before him. "What do you mean?" said Sebastian to him. "I will teach you how to pull doorbells. What do you want here?" "I want to see Clara," was the reply. "You dirty street urchin, you! Can't you say Fräulein Clara as the rest of us do? What have you to do with Fräulein Clara?" asked Sebastian savagely. "She owes me 40 pfennigs," explained the boy. "You are certainly not right in your mind. How do you know anyway that there is such a person as Fräulein Clara here?" "I showed her the way yesterday. That makes 20 pfennigs. And then I showed her the way back again. That makes 20 more. You see what a fib you are telling. Fräulein Clara never goes out. She is not able to go out. Get your gun where you belong before I start you." But the boy was not at all frightened. He remained calmly standing still and said coolly, "But I saw her on the street. I can describe her. She had short, curly black hair, her eyes are black, and her dress brown. She doesn't talk as we do." "Oh ho," thought Sebastian, chuckling to himself. "That is the little Mamselle who has been in more mischief." Then he said, pulling the boy in, "You're quite right. Follow me and wait at the door until I come out again. If I let you come in, you must play something. Oh, please, Fräulein Clara." He went upstairs, knocked at the library door, was called in. "There's a boy here who wishes to see Fräulein Clara herself," announced Sebastian. Clara was very much delighted at this unusual occurrence. "May come in, right?" he said. "May he not, Herr Kandidat, if he wants to speak to me?" The boy soon entered the room. According to his instructions, he immediately began to play his organ. In order to avoid the ABCs, Fräulein Rottenmeier was busying herself with all sorts of things in the dining room. Suddenly, she stopped to listen. Did the sound come from the street? So near? How could the sound of a hand organ come from the library? And yet, really, she rushed through the long dining room, threw open the door. There, she could hardly believe it. There, in the middle of the library, stood a ragged organ grinder, playing his instrument most diligently. The Herr Kandidat seemed trying to say something, but the words failed to come. Clara and Heidi were listening with beaming faces to the music. "Stop! Stop immediately!" exclaimed Fräulein Rottenmeier, coming into the room. Her voice was drowned by the music. Then she ran toward the boy, but suddenly she felt something between her feet. She looked on the floor. A horrible black creature was crawling under her skirts. A turtle! Fräulein Rottenmeier jumped in the air as she had not done before for many years, then screamed at the top of her voice, "Sebastian! Sebastian!" Suddenly, the organ grinder stopped, but this time her voice was heard above the music. Sebastian doubled up with laughter, stood outside the half-open door, where he had seen the jump Fräulein Rottenmeier made. Finally, he entered. Fräulein Rottenmeier had thrown herself into a chair. "Away with them both, the boy and that creature! Send him away immediately, Sebastian," she cried to him. Sebastian readily obeyed. He let out the boy, who had quickly seized his turtle. Then, pressing something into his hand, he said, 40 for Fräulein Clara and 40 for playing. You did well." Whereupon he closed the door. Quiet was once more restored in the library. The studies were resumed. Fräulein Rottenmeier had settled herself in the room, in order that her presence might prevent a similar dreadful occurrence. After the study hours, she intended to investigate the case, punish the guilty one, so that it would not be forgotten. Soon there came another knock at the door. Sebastian again came in with the information that a large basket had been brought, which was to be given immediately to Fräulein Clara herself. "To me?" asked Clara in surprise, and curious to know what it might be. "Let me see at once what it looks like." Sebastian brought in a covered basket, and then hastened away. "I think you had better finish your studies first, and then open the basket," remarked Fräulein Rottenmeier. Clara could not imagine what had been sent to her. She gazed with longing eyes at the basket. "Herr Kandidat," she said, stopping short while she was declining a word, "may I not take just one little peep to see what is in the basket, and then go right on with my lessons?" One point of view might be in favor of it, from another against it, replied the Herr Kandidat. "The reason for it would be that if your whole attention is directed toward this object—" This remark could not be finished. The cover of the basket was not fastened, and suddenly 1, 2, 3, and then 2, and then even more little kittens jumped out into the room, began to scamper around so unaccountably fast that it seemed as if the whole room were full of the tiny creatures. They jumped over the Herr Kandidat's boots, bit his trousers, climbed up Fräulein Rottenmeier's dress, rolled around her feet, leaped up into Clara's chair, scratched, groped about, and mewed. It was utter confusion. Clara was perfectly enraptured and kept exclaiming, "Oh, what cunning little creatures! How gaily they jump about! See, look, Heidi, there, here, look at that one!" Heidi with delight ran after them into every corner. The Herr Kandidat, hindered from going on with his teaching, stood by the table, lifting first one foot and then the other to avoid the annoyance. Fräulein Rottenmeier at first sat speechless with horror. Then she began to scream at the top of her voice, "Tinette! Tinette! Sebastian! Sebastian!" She did not even dare to rise from her chair, lest all the dreadful little creatures might jump at her at once. Finally, Sebastian and Tinette answered her repeated calls for help, and put the kittens, one after another, back into the basket, carried them to the bed made for the 2 kittens that had arrived the night before. This day again there had been no opportunity for yawning during the study hours. Late in the evening, Fräulein Rottenmeier had recovered sufficiently from the excitement of the morning, called Sebastian and Tinette up to the library to make a thorough investigation of the disgraceful proceedings. Then came out that Heidi, in her expedition of the previous day, had been the cause of all that had happened. Fräulein Rottenmeier sat there, pale with anger, and at first could find no words to express her feelings. She made a sign for Sebastian and Tinette to leave the room. She then turned to Heidi, who was standing by Clara's chair and had no idea what wrong she had done. Adelheid, she began in a severe voice, I know only one punishment which could have any effect on you. That you are a barbarian. But we shall see whether you will not become civilized down in the dark cellar with lizards and rats, so that you will never let such things happen again. Heidi listened calmly, wonderingly to the sentence, for she had never been in a frightful cellar. The room adjoining the elm hut, which her grandfather called the cellar, and where the cheese and fresh milk were kept, was a pleasant, inviting place, and she had never seen any rats and lizards. But Clara raised great objections to this. No, no, Fräulein Rottenmeier, you must wait until Papa's here. He's already written that he is coming soon. I will tell him everything. Then he will say what is to be done with Heidi. Fräulein Rottenmeier dared make no objection to this decision. She rose, saying somewhat bitterly, Very well, Clara, very well. But I too shall have a word to say to Herr Sesemann. Whereupon she left the room. Then followed 2 or 3 peaceful days, but Fräulein Rottenmeier did not get over her distress. The disappointment she had felt in Heidi kept coming before her eyes. It seemed to her that, since the little girl made her appearance in Sesemann house, everything had gone wrong and could never again be right. Clara was well contented. The days no longer seemed dull. It was Heidi who made the study hours pass quickly. The alphabet always confused her, and she could never learn it. When the Herr Kandidat was in the midst of explaining and writing the forms of the letters, and in order to make them clearer, compared one to a little horn, and another to a beak, she would exclaim with delight, It is a goat, or it is the robber bird. The description awakened all sorts of thoughts in her brain, but no idea of the alphabet. In the late afternoon hours, Heidi would again sit beside Clara, tell her about the elm, and her life there until her longing for it became so intense that she would cry out, I really must go home now. Tomorrow I really must go. But Clara always quieted these attacks, showed Heidi that she must surely remain till her papa came home. Then they would see what would happen. Oh, Yuri, I didn't see you. Hello, thank you for the wait. Oh, and have a good night. Hope you will rest well. Have some nice dreams. One happy prospect Heidi secretly enjoyed was to yield and become contented once more. This was that every day she remained, she would be able to add 2 more rolls for the grandmother. Every noon and night beside her plate lay a lovely white roll, which she immediately put into her pocket, for she could not eat the bread when she thought how the grandmother had none at all. She was hardly able any longer to eat the hard black bread. Every day after dinner, Heidi sat for 2 long hours, quiet and alone in her room, for she was not allowed to run outdoors in Frankfurt as she did on the Alm. She understood this now, never did it any more. Neither did she dare to talk to Sebastian in the dining room, for Fräulein Rottenmeier had forbidden that also. She never dreamed of speaking to Tinette. She always avoided, for Tinette spoke to her in a scornful tone, was continually laughing at her. Heidi understood her perfectly. So Heidi sat thinking to herself how the elm was growing green again, how the yellow flowers were glistening in the sunshine, how bright everything was, the snow and the mountain, in the whole wide valley. She often felt as if she could not bear it any longer. So great was her yearning to be there. Her aunt had told her, moreover, that she might go home whenever she liked. So it happened that one day she packed up her rolls in great haste in a big red neckerchief, put on her straw hat, and started. But at the very door she encountered Fräulein Rottenmeier, just returning from a walk. She stood still and in blank amazement gazed at Heidi from top to toe. Her eyes rested especially on the full red handkerchief, and she broke forth. "What kind of an expedition is this? What does it mean? Have I not strictly forbidden you to go wandering about again? Now you are trying to start out another time, looking for all the world like a tramp." "I am not going to wander about. I only want to go home," replied Heidi, frightened. "What? What? Go home? You want to go home?" Fräulein Rottenmeier wrung her hands in her agitation. "Run away! Herr Sesemann knew that. Run away from this house! Don't let him ever hear of it. And what is it that doesn't suit you in this house? Are you not better treated than you deserve? Is there anything you need? Have you ever in your whole life had a home, or a table, or the service that you have here? Tell me." "Oh," replied Heidi, "I know that perfectly well," continued the lady in great excitement. "You're like nothing, nothing at all. You're the most ungrateful child I ever heard of, and you don't know how well off you are." Then all Heidi's pent-up feelings broke forth. "Indeed, I am going home. I have been away so long that Schneehöppli must be crying for me all the time. My grandmother is expecting me, and Distelfink will be beaten if Peter has no cheese. And here you never see how the sun says good night to the mountain. If the robber bird should fly over Frankfurt, he would scream still louder, because so many people live together and make each other wicked, and do not go up on the cliffs where it would be good for them." "Mercy, the child is crazy!" exclaimed Fräulein Rottenmeier, and as she darted in alarm up the stairs, she ran hard against Sebastian, who was coming down. "Bring up that miserable creature at once," she called to him as she rubbed her head, for she had received no gentle bump. "Yes, yes, I'm all right, thank you," answered Sebastian, for he had been hit still harder. Heidi still stood, flaming eyes, on the same spot. Her whole body trembled with excitement. "Well, what have you been doing now?" asked Sebastian gaily. But when he really saw that Heidi did not move, he patted her kindly on the shoulder, and said comfortingly, "Pshaw, pshaw, the little mademoiselle must take it to heart. Just be merry, that is the best way. She almost broke my head just now. Don't be frightened. Well, still on the same spot? You must go upstairs. She said so." Heidi then went up the stairs, but very slowly and quietly, not at all as she was wont to go. That made Sebastian feel sorry. He went behind her and spoke encouraging words to her. "You mustn't give way. You must be so sad. Only be brave about it. You have had a very sensible little mademoiselle, who has never cried since she has been with us. Other little girls cry a dozen times a day. That is well known. The kittens are gay too, upstairs. They jump all around the floor, they act like mad. By and by, shall we go up there and look at them, when the lady is there anyway, and there is away?" Heidi nodded her head slightly, but so sadly it went to Sebastian's heart. He looked at Heidi quite feelingly as she stole away to her room. At supper time that day, Fräulein Rottenmeier said not a word, but kept casting strangely sharp glances at Heidi, so she expected she would suddenly do some unheard-of thing. But Heidi sat as still as a mouse at the table, did not stir. She neither ate nor drank, but she had put her bread quickly into her pocket. On the following morning, when the Herr Kandidat came upstairs, Fräulein Rottenmeier motioned to him secretly to come into the dining room. Here she confided to him her anxiety lest the change of air, the unwonted manner of life, the new impressions had driven the child out of his senses. She told him how Heidi had tried to run away, repeated to him as much as she could remember of her strange words. But the Herr Kandidat calmed Fräulein Rottenmeier, and assured her he knew that, on the one hand, Adelheid was certainly somewhat eccentric, but, on the other hand, she was in her right mind, so that gradually, with the right kind of treatment, he would be able to accomplish what he had in view. He found the case more serious because he had not yet succeeded in mastering the alphabet with her, but she couldn't seem to grasp the letters. Fräulein Rottenmeier felt calmer, and let the Herr Kandidat go to his work. Late in the afternoon, she remembered Heidi's appearance on her intended journey. She determined to replenish the child's wardrobe with some of Clara's clothing before her Sesemann should appear. She consulted with Clara about it, and as she agreed with her, and wished to give her a quantity of dresses and linen and hats, the lady went to Heidi's room to look into her closet and to examine the things she already had, decide what should be kept and what disposed of. But in a few moments she came back again, very much disgusted. "What a discovery I have made, Adelheid!" she exclaimed. "I never heard of such a thing. In your closet, closet, Adelheid, the bottom of this closet, what do I find? A pile of little rolls. Bread, I say, Clara, in a clothes closet. Such a pile stowed away." "Tinette," she then called into the dining room, "take away the old bread in Adelheid's closet, and the crushed straw head on the table." "No, no," screamed Heidi. "I must have the head, and the rolls are for the grandmother." Heidi was about to rush after Tinette, but was held fast by Fräulein Rottenmeier. "Stay here, and the rubbish will be taken away and put where it belongs," she said decidedly, holding Heidi back. But Heidi threw herself down by Clara's chair and began to cry in such despair, louder and louder, more bitterly, and sobbed again and again in her distress. "Oh, the grandmother won't have any rolls. They were for the grandmother. Now they are all gone, and she won't have any." It seemed as if her heart would break. Fräulein Rottenmeier went out. Clara was alarmed and perplexed by her distress. Heidi, don't cry so," she said imploringly. "Only listen to me. Don't be so troubled. See, I promise you I will give you just as many rolls for the grandmother, or even more when you go home. And then they will be fresh and soft. Those would become very hard, and were so already. Come, Heidi, don't cry so any more." It was long before Heidi could control her sobs, but she understood Clara's comforting words, took them to heart, else would she never have been able to stop crying. But she had to be reassured of her hope again and again, and so she kept asking Clara, while her sobs still interrupted her speech, Will you give me, for the grandmother, just as many as I had?" And Clara kept saying, "Yes, indeed I will, and more too, so be happy again." Heidi came to supper with her eyes all wet from weeping. When she saw her piece of bread, she had a fresh outbreak of sobbing. But this time she quickly controlled herself, for she realized that she had to behave at meal times. Sebastian, this time, kept making the most significant gestures whenever he came near Heidi. He would point to his own head, then to Heidi's. Then he would nod and wink as if to make her understand. Be comforted. I have looked out for everything, made it all right. When Heidi a little later went to her room and was about to get into bed, she found her little crumpled straw hat hidden under the coverlet. With perfect delight she snatched the old head out. In her joy she crumpled it still more. Then, tying it up in a handkerchief, she thrust it down into the deepest corner of her closet. Sebastian had hidden it under the coverlet. He had been in the dining room at the same time with Tinette when she was called. He had heard Heidi's cry of distress. Then he had followed Tinette. When she came out of Heidi's room with an armful of bread, the head on top of it all, he had snatched the head, exclaiming, "I will take care of that." And in great delight, he had rescued it for Heidi. That was what he meant at table by his gestures of consolation. we can do at least one more. Chapter 9. The master of the house hears of strange doing. A few days after this occurrence, there was a great bustle in the Sesemann house, and hurried running up and down stairs, for the master of the house had just returned from his journey. Sebastian and Tinette were bringing in one package after another from the well-laden carriage, for Herr Sesemann always brought home many beautiful things. He went first of all to his daughter's room to greet her. Heidi was sitting beside her, for it was late in the afternoon, and the two were always together. Clara greeted her father with great tenderness, for she loved him dearly, and the good papa showed no less affection towards his little Clara. Then he reached out his hand to Heidi. She had quietly withdrawn into a corner, and said kindly, "And this is our little Swiss girl, I suppose? Come here and give me your hand. That's right. Now tell me, are you and Clara good friends? You do not quarrel and get cross, and then cry and make up, and then begin all over again?" "No, Clara is always good to me," replied Heidi. "And Heidi has never tried to quarrel, Papa," quickly added Clara. "That's good. I am glad to hear that," said her papa as he rose. "But now you must allow me, Klärchen, to get some luncheon, for I have had nothing to eat today. Later I will come back to you, and you shall see what I have brought home." Herr Sesemann went into the dining room, where Fräulein Rottenmeier was overseeing the table laid for his midday meal. After Herr Sesemann had sat down, the lady, looking like a living picture of gloom, had taken a seat opposite him, the master of the house said to her, "Fräulein Rottenmeier, what am I to think? You have put on a truly alarming face at my return. What is the matter? Clara is very lively." "Herr Sesemann," began the lady with impressive earnestness, "Clara's also concerned. We have been frightfully deceived." "How so?" asked Herr Sesemann, calmly sipping his coffee. "We had decided, as you know, Herr Sesemann, to have a companion for Clara in the house, and as I knew very well how particular you were to have only good and noble associates for your daughter, I fixed my mind on a young Swiss girl, expecting to see such a person appear that often read about, one who sprung up in the pure mountain air, so to speak, and goes through life without touching the earth." "I think," remarked Herr Sesemann, "that Swiss children touch the earth if they move along. Otherwise they would have wings instead of feet." "Herr Sesemann, you know what I mean," continued the Fräulein. "I mean one of those well-known forms of living in the pure mountain regions, which pass by us like an ideal breath." "But what would my Clara do with an ideal breath, Fräulein Rottenmeier?" "No, Herr Sesemann, I am not joking. The matter is more serious to me than you think. I have been frightfully, really quite frightfully deceived." "But how so frightfully? The child doesn't seem to me so very frightful," remarked Herr Sesemann calmly. "You should know just one thing, Herr Sesemann, only one. What sort of people and animals and creatures filled your house with in your absence. The Herr Kandidat can tell you about that." "With animals? What am I to understand by that, Fräulein Rottenmeier?" "It is not to be understood. This creature's whole conduct is past understanding, except from one point of view. She has attacks of being out of her mind." Up to this time, Herr Sesemann had not taken the matter seriously. But out of her mind? This might have serious consequences for his daughter. Herr Sesemann looked at Fräulein Rottenmeier very closely, as if he wished first to assure himself she herself was not troubled in that way. Just at this moment, the door opened. The Herr Kandidat was ushered in. "Ah, here comes our Herr Kandidat, who will give us an explanation," exclaimed Herr Sesemann to him. "Come, come, and sit down by me." And he held out his hand to him. "The Herr Kandidat will drink a cup of black coffee with me, Fräulein Rottenmeier. Sit down, sit down. Don't be formal. And now tell me, my dear sir, what is the matter with the child who has come into my house to be a companion for my daughter, to whom you are teaching? What is the story about her bringing animals into the house? What is the matter with her mind? The Herr Kandidat had first to express his pleasure at Herr Sesamann's safe return, bid him welcome home, but Herr Sesamann urged him to give his opinion about the matter in question. So the Herr Kandidat began. If I were to speak my mind about the character of this little girl, I should first of all make a special mention of the fact that if, on the one hand, she shows a lack of development, which, through a more or less neglected education, or, to express it better, occasioned by a somewhat tardy instruction, on the contrary, her good qualities unquestionably showing the seclusion of a long abode in the Alps, which, if it doesn't exceed a certain length of time, without doubt has its good side. My dear Herr Kandidat, interrupted Herr Sesemann, you are really giving yourself too much trouble. Tell me, has the child alarmed you by bringing in animals? And what do you think of her society for my little daughter? I don't wish in any way to offend the young girl, the Herr Kandidat began again, for if she, on the one hand, shows a certain kind of social experience, due to the more or less uncultivated life in which she moved up to the time of her coming to Frankfurt, which coming... Pray excuse me, Herr Kandidat. Don't trouble yourself. I will hasten to look after my daughter. Whereupon Herr Sesemann hurried out of the room, and did not return. He went into the library and sat down beside his little daughter. Heidi rose from her seat. Herr Sesemann turned toward the child, saying, Look here, little girl. Wait a moment. Bring me... Herr Sesemann did not exactly know what he wanted, but he wished to send Heidi away for a little while. Bring me a glass of water. Fresh water? Asked Heidi. Yes, indeed, quite fresh, answered Herr Sesemann. Heidi disappeared. Now, my dear little Clara, said her papa, while he drew near to his daughter and took her hand in his. Tell me clearly and distinctly what sort of animals your companion brought into the house, and why Fräulein Rottenmeier should think that she is sometimes not quite right in her head. Can you tell me that? Clara was able to do so, for the worthy lady in her horror had spoken to her also about Heidi's perplexing words, the meaning of which was clear to Clara. She first told her about the turtle and the kittens, then explained to him Heidi's remark, which had so shocked Fräulein Rottenmeier. Herr Sesemann burst into a hearty laugh. So, you don't care to have me send the child home, Klärchen? You are not tired of her? Asked her father. No, papa, don't do that, exclaimed Clara imploringly. Since Heidi has been here, something always happens every day. The time goes so quickly. Not at all as it did before she came, but nothing ever happened. Heidi tells me so many things. Very good, Klärchen. And here comes your little friend back again. Have you brought cool, fresh water? Asked Herr Sesemann, as Heidi offered him a glass of water. Yes, fresh from the well, replied Heidi. Did you run to the well yourself, Heidi? Asked Clara. Yes, indeed. It is perfectly fresh, but I had to go a long way, for there were so many people at the first well, so I went through the whole street, but there were just as many people at the second well. Then I went to another street, and there I got the water. The gentleman with the white hair sent his regards to Herr Sesemann. So your expedition was very successful? Said Herr Sesemann, laughing. And who is this gentleman? He was passing by the well, then stood still and said, As you have a glass, you might give me a drink. To whom are you going to take the water? And I said, To Herr Sesemann. Then he laughed very loud and told me to give you his regards, and also said, Herr Sesemann ought to enjoy it. Who should it have been? How did the gentleman look? Asked Herr Sesemann. He laughed pleasantly and had a big gold chain, and a gold thing with a red large stone hanging from it. There was a horse's head on his cane. That is the doctor. That is my old doctor, said Clara and her father at the same time. And Herr Sesemann laughed again to himself at the thought of his friend and how he would regard his new way of having his supply of water brought to him. That same evening, while Herr Sesemann and Fräulein Rottenmeier were sitting alone in the dining room and talking over all sorts of household matters. He told her that his daughter's companion was to remain in the house. He thought that the child was in a normal condition. His daughter found her society very pleasant and more enjoyable than any other. I wish, therefore, he added very positively, to have this child always treated kindly, and that her peculiarities shall not be considered as sins. If you should not be able to deal with the child alone, you have the prospect of valuable assistance, for my mother is coming very soon to my house to make a long visit. She manages everyone, no matter how singular they are. You are well aware of that, Fräulein Rottenmeier? Yes, indeed, I know that, Herr Sesemann, replied the lady, but not with an expression of relief at the assured prospect of help. Herr Sesemann had only a short time to remain at home now. After 2 weeks' business called him back to Paris. As his little daughter would not consent to his going away so soon, he consoled her with the promise of a visit from her grandmamma. It might be expected in a few days. Herr Sesemann had hardly left home when a letter came announcing that Frau Sesemann had started from Holstein, where she lived on an old estate. She would arrive at a certain hour on the following day, and the carriage was to be sent to the railway station for her. Clara was greatly delighted by the news. She told Heidi that evening so much about her grandmamma that Heidi, too, began to talk about her grandmamma. And Fräulein Rottenmeier looked at her disapprovingly, but the child did not think this anything strange. She felt perpetually under her disapproval. When she started later to go to her room, Fräulein Rottenmeier called her first into hers, explained then and there that she must never use the name grandmamma, but must address her as gnädige Frau. Do you understand this? Asked the lady, as Heidi looked at her somewhat doubtfully. But she gave her such a forbidding look in return that Heidi asked for no more explanation, although she did not understand the title. So, I guess the grandma will be coming over. Okay, but for today, this shall be it. Finish chapter 8 and 9, and I'm still a bit tired. I should try to get here. It's with everything, if you don't use a skill, it becomes harder to use it for a long time. So I hope I can read again next week for you. I should be able to read more these days because I'm off Saturday. Oh yeah, I hope you enjoyed the story and that you were able to relax. Have a good. I hope you will all have a great day. Okay, good. And make sure to take care of yourself, please. I will see you next time. Next time is, I think, Friday. Thank you all. And we won't be waiting anyone as to not disturb people who are very relaxed right now. Bye bye.